What if the history you were taught was never the full story? What if the truth about your soul, your origin, and your divine potential was buried, not by time, but by design? Deep beneath the marble corridors of the Vatican lies one of the most secretive archives in the world. 85 kilometers of locked shelves, guarded vaults, and ancient manuscripts the public is never allowed to see. But why? Pause for a moment. What knowledge could be so dangerous, so transformative, that it had to be buried for centuries? We're not talking about myths. We're talking about banned gospels, texts like the Gospel of Mary, which portrays the divine feminine as spiritually equal to Christ. The Book of Enoch, which reveals celestial beings descending to earth with forbidden knowledge. The Gospel of Thomas, which dares to say, "The kingdom is within you." These are not forgotten scrolls. They were removed deliberately, silenced by councils, burned by empires, buried by the very institutions that claim to protect divine truth. But truth has a way of resurfacing. What if these hidden writings hold the keys to awakening? What if they reveal that you don't need intermediaries, because the divine is already within? Tonight, we don't just revisit history, we expose the secret war on spiritual knowledge. Because the real story was never destroyed. It was hidden. And now it's time to bring it back to light. Why the Vatican hides these ancient manuscripts begins now. Part 1. The Vatican Archives, a library of forbidden knowledge. Hidden beneath the heart of Vatican City, below the marble floors of St. Peter's Basilica, lies one of the most secretive repositories of knowledge on earth. The Vatican Apostolic Archive... More than 50 miles of shelving, over 35,000 volumes, manuscripts that predate entire civilizations, scrolls never shown to the public, books bound in ancient leather, inked by hands that vanished centuries ago. The Vatican claims it's simply a historical archive, a collection of letters, papal decrees, and church records. But if that's all it is, why the extreme secrecy? Why are most scholars denied entry? Why must heads of state formally petition the Pope himself just to read a single document? Why are digital scans limited, censored, or lost? Because what lies within may be far more than routine bureaucracy. It may be the truth that could unravel the entire narrative. Lost scriptures and forbidden texts. Throughout history, dozens of spiritual texts were excluded from the biblical canon, not because they were proven false, but because they were too empowering. Among the writings rumored to be hidden inside the Vatican archives, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, portraying her not as a sinner, but as a spiritual teacher and perhaps even the closest disciple of Christ. The Book of Enoch, describing angelic beings, interdimensional knowledge, and secrets of creation that challenge both science and theology. The Gospel of Thomas, a collection of Jesus' sayings, many of which focus on inner awakening and divine power within. These aren't just alternative stories, they present an entirely different vision of spirituality, one where enlightenment is personal, where divine connection requires no middleman, and that is exactly why they were hidden. Control through curation. Religion has always been about more than salvation. It's about control. By deciding which texts are sacred and which are heresy, the Church didn't just shape theology, it shaped history, society, and human consciousness. Imagine if people knew that spiritual authority didn't come from an institution, but from within. That Jesus may have taught liberation over obedience. That Mary Magdalene wasn't a footnote, but a founder. What kind of world would we live in? Why keep the truth locked away? Because the moment people realize they don't need a church to find God. That moment, centuries of control begin to crumble. Once they see that knowledge was never lost but deliberately hidden, they begin to question everything. And that is the greatest threat to power, awakened minds. The hidden becomes seen. The Vatican can lock the doors, they can hide the manuscripts, but they cannot suppress the truth forever. Because truth has a way of resurfacing. And now that time has come. The question is no longer what's hidden, but why. And in the next chapter, we'll go deeper into the banned Gospels themselves. Because the forbidden texts don't just rewrite history. They reveal who we truly are. Part 2. The Lost Books of the Bible. The Bible, hailed as the most sacred text in Western civilization. A book believed to contain divine truth, a spiritual guide for billions. But what if the Bible we know today is incomplete? What if what's missing is not accidental, but intentional? You see, centuries ago, powerful religious councils gathered, not to discover spiritual truth, but to decide it. Dozens of early Christian texts were debated, dismissed, and ultimately banned. Not because they lacked authenticity, but because they revealed a version of spirituality the Church could not control. Let's uncover what was lost and why it mattered so much. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene, a silenced teacher. Imagine if the most misunderstood figure in the Bible was actually one of its most enlightened. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene, discovered in the 1800s, portrays Mary not as a sinner, but as a spiritual teacher, a mystic, someone who grasped Jesus' message on a level no other disciple could. In this Gospel, Mary speaks of inner vision, of soul alchemy, of a direct path to the divine, one that requires no church, no hierarchy, no priest. But such a message was dangerous, because if spiritual power was personal, institutional power became irrelevant. And so, Mary's voice was erased, her gospel buried, and the Church's version of Christianity became one of obedience, not awakening. The Gospel of Thomas, the words, "They didn't want you to hear." Unlike the traditional Gospels, the Gospel of Thomas isn't a biography of Jesus. It's a collection of his sayings, unfiltered, untouched by doctrine. In it, Jesus doesn't talk about sin or salvation through sacrifice. He speaks of awakening, of the divine light within. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. This gospel doesn't place God in the sky. It places the kingdom within you, which is precisely why it was removed. Because if enlightenment comes from within, what happens to those who claim to stand between you and God? The Book of Enoch. Forbidden knowledge from the stars. The most mysterious of all is the Book of Enoch. Once considered sacred by early Christians, this book tells of divine beings, watchers, who descended to earth and gave humanity forbidden knowledge, astronomy, medicine, weaponry, and the secrets of creation itself. Their offspring, the Nephilim, were said to be giants, hybrid beings born of angels and humans. A story too radical, too mythic, too powerful to remain in the canon. But fragments of Enoch were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, evidence that it was once revered before someone decided it was too dangerous to preserve. The pattern of erasure. These aren't random exclusions. They are part of a pattern, a deliberate effort to suppress the idea that spiritual power lives within you. These texts speak of self-mastery, direct communion, and cosmic truths. They challenge religious control. They reveal a deeper narrative, one where enlightenment isn't granted by men in robes, but discovered through your own soul. And that's why they were hidden. But the veil is lifting. The lost books were never truly lost. They were silenced. And now their voices are returning. Because truth cannot be buried forever. Part 3. Suppressed teachings and hidden esoteric knowledge. Long before doctrines, long before cathedrals, long before the word Christian meant power, there was a movement, a sacred path, a way of awakening the soul. The earliest followers of Christ were not building empires. They were seeking enlightenment. They spoke of direct experience with the divine, of the soul's journey through many lifetimes, of the light that lives within. But when Christianity became the religion of empire, everything changed. What was once a path of inner liberation became a structure of outer control. Under Emperor Constantine, the faith of the mystics was institutionalized, and with it came the need to define, to regulate, to dominate. The mystical teachings, those that empowered the individual, were labeled heresy. The Gnostic Gospels were condemned, their wisdom silenced. The Gnostic Gospels, the kingdom within. In 1945, buried beneath the sands of Nag Hammadi, Egypt, a forgotten library was discovered. Ancient scrolls sealed away for centuries. Inside them, a Jesus few have ever known. This Jesus did not demand worship, he taught awakening. He did not say, "Follow me," he said, "Know thyself." One passage reads, "The kingdom is inside you, and it is outside of you. When you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will understand that you are children of the living Father." This wasn't about obedience to a church. It was about sovereignty. Divine truth, not handed down, but discovered within. Reincarnation, the soul's journey and forbidden knowledge. Did you know early Christians believed in reincarnation? The idea that the soul evolves over lifetimes, each life a step toward divine realization, was central to many early teachings. Origen, one of the Church's earliest theologians, spoke of the soul's pre-existence, its long journey home. But in 553 AD, at the Second Council of Constantinople, these teachings were erased. Why? Because if the soul is eternal, what is there left to fear? No eternal damnation, no hellfire leash. And without fear, control collapses. If the soul cannot be damned forever, then the threat of hell loses its grip. If you know you'll return, your soul eternal, you stop obeying out of fear and begin living from truth. And for the Church, that was unacceptable. Why did the Vatican hide this knowledge? Imagine a library filled with books that could change the world. Manuscripts that speak of the light within, of divine wisdom, reincarnation, spiritual sovereignty. Now imagine that library exists, locked beneath Vatican City, guarded not by soldiers, but by silence. The truth is, these teachings were not destroyed. They were hidden, because they give power back to you, power to awaken, to remember who you are, to live not in submission, but in divine alignment. The question is no longer why this knowledge was suppressed. The question is, are you ready to reclaim it? Part 4. The Secret Archives and What They Contain. Beneath the marble pillars of Vatican City lies something far more powerful than gold. A labyrinth of locked vaults, stone corridors bathed in shadows, scrolls so ancient they crumble at a whisper. And somewhere in that eternal silence, the story of your soul, waiting. Over 50 miles of forbidden knowledge kept hidden from the world. This is not a conspiracy, it's the Vatican Secret Archives, a name that reveals exactly what it is, a vault of secrets. Inside are manuscripts older than Christianity itself, scrolls written in languages most no longer read, records of lost teachings, banned gospels, and suppressed histories, each one a piece of a much larger puzzle. But what exactly are they hiding? The forgotten roots, pre-Christian influences on Christianity. Before Christianity came something else. Mystery schools in Egypt, Persia, and Mesopotamia taught the path of spiritual transformation, the inner resurrection of the soul. And when you trace the life of Christ through the lens of these older traditions, something startling appears. Horus, Osiris, Mithras, Krishna, all gods of death and rebirth, all born of a virgin, all performing miracles, all sacrificed, all resurrected. These were not copies, they were archetypes, sacred patterns found in the soul's evolution across cultures and time. Even Christian sacraments, baptism, communion, immaculate conception, mirror rituals from earlier belief systems. And if the Vatican ever acknowledged this, if people saw that Christianity was not a divine invention, but a spiritual continuation, its claim of exclusivity would collapse overnight. The missing years of Jesus and his journey east. The Bible is strangely silent on Jesus' life between ages 12 and 30, 18 missing years. But what if they weren't missing, just hidden? Some ancient manuscripts, like the life of Saint Isa found in a Tibetan monastery, suggest Jesus traveled to the east, that he studied with Buddhist monks, learned from Hindu sages, and mastered the spiritual sciences of consciousness and vibration. His teachings of detachment from materialism, of love over law, of the kingdom within. They mirror Eastern philosophy more than Roman theology. Did the Vatican suppress this because it revealed a different Jesus? Not a passive lamb, but a spiritual master. Not a figure to be worshipped, but one to be emulated. Forbidden knowledge, lost civilizations and cosmic truths. But it doesn't stop with theology. Some believe the archives contain records of Atlantis, Lemuria, and civilizations erased from public history. Texts that describe advanced technologies, sacred geometry, and the energetic blueprint of the universe. Even stranger, high-ranking Vatican astronomers have hinted at extraterrestrial life. Why would the Church acknowledge this, unless they knew more than they claimed? What if hidden within those walls are truths about humanity's true origins? That we are not fallen sinners, but evolving beings of light and consciousness? The reason for secrecy. The Church's power rests not on faith, but on control. And to control the present, you must control the past. If people learned that Jesus was a mystic, that Christianity grew from older systems, that human beings are capable of divine awareness without a gatekeeper, then the illusion would fall, and with it, the need for intermediaries. The real question was never, Are they hiding something? The real question is, what happens when the truth can no longer be contained? Because the real revelation is not in their archives, it's already within you. Part 5. What this means for you. For centuries, knowledge has been the currency of power. But hidden knowledge, that is control. Because when you can decide what people are allowed to know, you don't just control what they think. You control what they believe is possible. And that is exactly what happened. Across time, religious authorities carefully curated history, choosing which texts to preserve, which voices to silence, and which truths to bury so deep no one would ever find them. But not all were lost. Some survived, hidden in the sands of Egypt, sealed in ancient jars, or buried beneath centuries of Vatican secrecy. And what they reveal is earth-shattering. They tell us that Christianity, in its earliest form, wasn't a system of control. It wasn't about blind obedience. It was a path, a journey inward, a call to remember the divine spark already within you. The Gnostic path, a forgotten way back to yourself. The early Gnostics didn't see Jesus as a god to worship. They saw him as a guide, a master of inner truth, pointing the way not to a church, but to you. They taught that salvation wasn't about being saved from sin. It was about awakening from ignorance. You are not a sinner in need of redemption. You are a soul in need of remembrance. But that kind of teaching couldn't be allowed, because a person who remembers their divine nature can no longer be ruled by fear. The Vatican's role, guardians of power or gatekeepers of truth. The Vatican Secret Archives are more than a historical library. They are a vault, a fortress guarding a version of truth too powerful to release. Within those shelves may lie manuscripts that speak of reincarnation, energy healing, cosmic origins, and a Jesus far more mystical than the one taught from the pulpit. Imagine if the world knew that Jesus may have studied in the East, that he taught meditation, vibration, and the illusion of material reality. Imagine if people realized that their spiritual power didn't come from outside themselves, but from within. It would change everything, which is why it was hidden. A new era, the power is now in your hands. We live in a time where secrets can no longer be contained. The ancient texts are surfacing, the lost teachings are returning, and the door that was once locked is beginning to open. But the key has always been in your hands, so ask yourself, are you ready to stop being told what to believe? Are you ready to question the narrative, to unlearn? And remember, because once you begin to seek truth for yourself, not from priests or institutions, but from the deep knowing within you, everything changes. You become sovereign, unshakable, awake, and that is what they feared the most. You were never meant to be a follower. You were meant to be the light, and now it's time to reclaim it. Final CTA, the greatest mystery of all. For centuries, we've searched for meaning in life. But what if the real mystery begins after it ends? Ancient texts spoke of a passage. Modern science is now asking the same question. Thousands have glimpsed what lies beyond. Not in theory, but in experience. What do near-death experiences really reveal? And if they hid the truth about your soul, what else lies beyond the veil? Next, we follow the souls who crossed over and returned to tell the tale. What happens after death? The journey continues, beyond the veil. Next, video, what happens after death? the science behind NDEs. The journey continues, and this time we go beyond the veil.